Hey guys, today we step behind the heavy oak doors and straight into a medieval royal feast, the kind of night that smells like goose fat, clove, studded wine, and a whiff of danger. We are not talking peasant pottage or stale trenchers. This is meat piled like trophies, honey dripping from fruit platters, and one wrong move away from offending someone with the power to have you clapped in irons, or worse, snubbed by the king's cousin. You probably won't survive the seating chart, let alone the mead. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You arrive just as the sun sets, casting molten light through narrow stained glass slits. The castle rises out of the damp earth like something grown rather than built. Stone and moss and the reek of horses. You are directed, not invited, through a side entrance, up winding stairs, into a high, vaulted hall already echoing with lute strings and laughter. The walls are dressed in tapestries of myth and battle, but all eyes are on the tables. Dozens of them. Long, low, creaking under their own anticipation. At the far end, elevated on a dais, sits the high table, literally and figuratively above everyone else. A local duke, a bishop in stiff red robes, and someone whispered to be the king's illegitimate son are already seated. Below, the rest of the hall fills with courtiers, knights, merchants with polished boots and powdered necks, all trying to seem casual about their seating while absolutely not being casual at all. Your boots squelch faintly as you cross the rush-covered floor. Not the cleanest, but who is looking at your feet when firelight's flickering off gold? Trimmed goblets and glazed trenchers the size of your torso, there is a sudden blare of trumpets. Not subtle. Everyone hushes as a page boy with stick, straight posture reads out the names of tonight's main guests. The hall murmurs approval. No one reads your name. Which is fine. You were not hoping to be announced over roast fowl and bladder pipes anyway. A server gestures to your bench. You sit. The wood is splintery. The man beside you smells like lavender oil and hard opinions. The woman across from you is already biting into a baked pear, eyes scanning the hall for someone more interesting. A hound dozes near the fire. It snores. Then the door creaks open again. Everyone cranes. Here comes the real theater. A procession of servers, bareheaded, in russet tunics. Bearing platters like battleground trophies, roast swans dressed in their own feathers, boars with orange slices in their mouths, pigeons glazed in something that smells suspiciously like cinnamon and risk. A giant goose, skin burnished like bronze, is placed near the high table. One lord smacks the table with delight. You have not even had your first bite, and already you understand, this is not just dinner. This is politics. This is theater. This is survival with a side of horseradish. And the feast has only just begun. The first course arrives in a blur of elbows and clanking pewter. A slab of trenchers, thick slices of stale bread meant more as plates than food, lands in front of you, soaking up the oily runoff from everything that follows. Your neighbor nods toward it. Eat around the edges, he murmurs, unless you enjoy the taste of gravy sponge. Sound advice. You are handed a slice of venison pie wrapped in crust dark as night, the meat inside stewed with juniper and cloves. It is both savory and suspicious. Every bite feels like a gamble between flavor and medieval food safety. No one seems concerned. A monk 2 seats down is already on his second helping, face gleaming like the glazed carrot beside him. Servants, young, pale, slightly terrified, dart between rows carrying pitchers of mead. The drink is golden, thick, and sweet enough to coat your teeth. It burns gently going down, like a compliment from someone who is also plotting against you. Beside you, someone jokes that it is liquid courage for speaking to lords. Then promptly sloshes half of it into his lap. A French theory once claimed that the earliest mead recipes were whispered by forest spirits to wandering monks. You are not sure about that. But after your third gulp, you would believe anything. And then the entertainment begins. A trio of minstrels, one on lute, one with a bowed rebec, and one who just seems to yell rhythmically, begin a tune so lively your spoon twitches. Dancers whirl in saffron and teal. A fool in a jester's cap tumbles dangerously close to the bishop's trencher, but somehow survives. You notice that the higher up the table you look, the calmer the laughter. Status, apparently, does not giggle. More food comes. Eel in green sauce. Stuffed goose neck. A tureen of pottage so thick the ladle stands upright. You try a spoonful. It tastes of lentils, garlic, and secrets. One mainstream fact, feasts like this often followed strict culinary choreography. Dishes arrived in symbolic order, light to heavy, bland to spiced, fish to fowl. The structure mirrored the social hierarchy, reinforcing order through cutlery and cuisine. Not that everyone followed the rules. The man across from you is already eating goose with his hands, tearing the crisp skin and dipping it in mustard like he owns the bird. And the table. Still, the etiquette is daunting. Do you wipe your fingers on the bread or your sleeve? Do you toast upward or across? Is it rude to ask what is in the jelly if it wobbles? Suspiciously, historians still argue whether medieval feasts were more about consumption or performance. Were guests meant to enjoy the meal or merely witness its extravagance? Judging by the sheer quantity of food now being carried out again, yes, again, you are guessing both. You lean back as a platter of almond, stuffed quail passes you by. The scent is heavenly. The noise is rising. Conversation clinks with goblets. At the high table, a knight has just stood to recite a limerick about a goose, a miller, and a particularly unfortunate wedding. The bishop pretends not to hear. The crowd howls. Somewhere near the hearth, a dog begins barking. A child laughs. A wine jug topples. And through it all, you keep eating. Because tonight, the rules are simple: keep your seat, keep your cup full, and try not to choke on the next course. You are midway through a glistening chunk of roasted goose, skin blistered to perfection, fat pooling like molten gold, when something remarkable happens. Dessert arrives. Not fruit. Not nuts. Real, actual dessert. A tower of marchpane shaped like a castle, complete with battlements and tiny almond sentries. A pair of kitchen boys carries it in like it is the crown. Jewels. One nearly trips. Gasps ripple. The tower survives. Barely. Everyone applauds. Even the grumpiest lord gives a single nod of approval, which in noble terms is basically rapture. A steward slices the almond fortress with a gilded knife, distributing shards of sweet paste laced with rosewater and honey. It is cloying. It is incredible. You have never tasted anything like it. The high-born woman beside you pinches off a piece, chews thoughtfully, then offers you the rest with a shrug. Apparently, sharing sugar counts as flirting in this century. You accept. Bold move. Then come the subtleties, those extravagant edible illusions that exist solely to show off a chef's god complex. A swan formed around its own meat, feathers reattached and wings outstretched. A pie that releases a live bird when cut. flapping frantically through the rafters to stunned laughter and one spilled goblet. A jelly molded to resemble the Virgin Mary. She wobbles gently every time the table shakes. One mainstream historical fact: these subtleties were not just food, they were political theater. Designed to amaze, intimidate, and remind everyone that power could be plated and served. A well-executed illusion reflected on the host's wealth, piety, and connections. Plus, it made everyone forget the stew had been burnt. Fringe accounts even describe a noble who commissioned a sugar sculpture of his own castle, only to order it eaten before the dessert course ended, symbolizing his control over both land and luxury. Another tale tells of a bishop served a fruit tart shaped like a devil's face, as a joke. He did not laugh. You are handed a goblet of spiced wine, Hippocras, steeped with cinnamon, ginger, and enough clove to clear your sinuses. It is warm, sharp, and slips through your thoughts like candlelight. For a moment, everything blurs, the harpist in the corner plucking out a melancholy tune, the lord with the wine stained beard arguing about falconry, the noblewoman now giggling at something you did not quite hear. And yet, the undercurrent of discipline remains. Servants watch carefully. No one eats before the lord lifts his fork. The laughter, though genuine, follows rhythm. The feast is a performance, and you are a background actor who has accidentally wandered into the spotlight. Just chew, nod, and occasionally say splendid. Historians still argue whether guests truly enjoyed these displays or simply endured them in awe. Was it indulgence or obligation? A party, or a pageant of edible propaganda? Your stomach certainly believes in the former. You have lost count of the courses. The goose sits like an anchor. The sweetmeats are vanishing faster than the platters arrive. Someone offers you a candied fennel seed wrapped in gold leaf. You accept, because why not? It tastes oddly like soap and wealth. The hall glows now, firelight reflecting off every polished surface. The smell of roasting, toasting, and something faintly floral hangs in the air. You catch sight of the kitchens in the distance, dozens of hands still working, still slicing, still plating. And as the servers carry in yet another round of dishes, this one involving pears poached in wine, you finally admit it: this is not just dinner. It is a siege by fork. You lean back, cautiously adjusting your belt, if you had one, while across the table, a squire is being propped upright by two friends after attempting to match his lord's wine pace. He fails, spectacularly. There is a pause as he slumps forward, then raucous laughter. The feast marches on. Somewhere behind the high table, a group of musicians strikes up a lively tune. Pipes, fiddles, a lute. One of the lords thumps his goblet on the table in rhythm. A dog appears underfoot, possibly summoned by the smell of bones and spilled gravy, and begins a slow lap of leftovers. You do not notice the jester until he is beside you. Half his face painted, half shaven, juggling tiny glazed apples while making puns so bad you almost choke on your last spoonful of lentil custard. You are not sure if he is a comedic genius or mildly possessed. He bows low, then somersaults straight into the path of a roast peacock being carried aloft. Miraculously, the bird survives. The platter wobbles. The hall erupts into applause. You wipe your hands on a cloth napkin embroidered with someone's crest. Fancy. Probably not meant for wiping. This is a medieval feast in full bloom, half revelry, half ritual. Every motion is choreographed, but the wine is loosening the seams. Someone in saffron robes begins reciting a poem about a lion falling in love with a baker's daughter. It is both strange and beautiful. Someone else tries to climb a table. He is gently redirected by a servant with the patience of a saint. Mainstream historical fact. Feasts like this were more than social occasions, they were political statements. They reinforced hierarchy, hospitality, and the idea that power came with both abundance and obligation. If you hosted well, you ruled well. At least, that was the idea. And that is why everyone is watching the high table. The Lord, flanked by clergy and knights, dips his spoon into a golden bowl of pottage. Thick with herbs, spiked with pepper and saffron. It gleams like treasure. You hear a whisper, the saffron alone costs more than most peasants make in a season. He eats slowly, with dignity. Everyone else adjusts their speed accordingly. You sneak a glance behind you. Near the wall, servants kneel, eating their share in quick, practiced bites. The dishes are simpler, cooler, but still generous. One girl gnaws a goose neck with such precision it is basically an art form. And yet, not all is merry. The steward stops to whisper something into the ear of the cook, quiet, urgent. You catch only a few words, no almonds left. Pigeon spoiled, borrowed from the cellar. The cook's expression flickers, then steadies. The show must go on. One fringe tidbit, some feasts hired feast managers, specialists who did nothing but organize the kitchen's tempo, guest flow, and course timing. Basically, medieval party planners. And heaven help them if a dish was late or the meat was dry. Historians still argue whether these feasts genuinely impressed the guests or just intimidated them into politeness. Did people leave dazzled or exhausted? You are leaning toward the latter. The flavors, the fanfare, the sheer flood of food, it is overwhelming. But intoxicating, too. Outside the windows, the sky is fading to indigo. A servant lights another wall sconce. A knight nearby belches quietly and refills his goblet. The fiddlers now play something slower, almost mournful. The air shifts. The feast is starting to wind down. But there is still one more course, and from the sudden hush in the room, it is something big. The doors creak open with theatrical flair, and the final course enters like a crowned monarch. A roast boar, its mouth stuffed with apples, its flanks glistening with herbs and fat, is carried in by 4 servants moving in careful unison. One slips slightly, too much mead, maybe, but recovers with the grace of a man who has done this before. You hear the gasp ripple through the crowd. This is what they have been waiting for, a centerpiece. A triumph. Goose and mead are fine, but a whole boar, that is feast poetry. It is flanked by smaller dishes, a castle made from pastry and filled with almond custard. Tiny birds encased in golden pies, and something that looks suspiciously like a fish stuffed inside a chicken, stuffed inside a rabbit. You are not sure where the rabbit ends or the chicken begins. Someone claims it is a French delicacy, someone else mutters, abomination. The Lord rises, offers a brief blessing, his voice more hoarse than holy, and carves the first slice himself. The tension breaks. Everyone breathes again. The feast resumes at full gallop. You tear into a chunk of spiced boar shoulder and wash it down with a final gulp of mead. It is sticky, potent, a little like drinking honey that has been dared to ferment. Your hands shine, your lips tingle. You have crumbs in your hair and a sliver of something red stuck to your sleeve. Possibly beetroot. Possibly shame. A dog chases a tossed bone beneath the table. A minstrel begins a song so bawdy the steward frowns and then starts laughing anyway. The jester reappears with a puppet of the cook. It is not flattering. The cook laughs anyway. He has earned it. And somewhere in the corner, a scribe is taking notes. Mainstream historical fact: major feasts were often recorded, what was served, who attended, even which dishes were praised. These records were not just memory. They were propaganda. See how generous our table, see how civilized our court, but what they did not record is how tired everyone was. Your legs ache from sitting. Your belt is at war with your stomach. Even the noblest guests look glazed now, like pastries under a slow fire. One leans too far, misses his goblet, and spills mead into his lap. He blinks. Resets. Keeps eating. Outside, the moon rises. The feast is nearly done. Leftovers will be gathered, bones boiled, sauces scraped and repurposed. Nothing wasted. Not even extravagance. Fringe belief: some nobles buried the bones of feast animals in their garden for luck. Others burned the leftovers to ward off spirits. A few, more practically, gave them to the poor. Historians still argue whether this generosity was sincere or performative, but the gesture mattered either way. You step away at last. Through a side door, into the cold night. The manor glows behind you, warm, bright, alive with feasting echoes. You pass a stable boy munching a scrap of goose fat on stale bread. He grins, then offers you a bite. You accept. It is cold. It is delicious. Down the path, a peasant woman stands over a pot slung on a tripod. She is stirring quietly, alone, but the smell is unmistakable: beans and onions. Her feast is humbler, but no less sacred. Because across this continent, from throne to hearth, every meal, grand or gritty, is stitched with one truth: food is survival. Celebration and statement, all at once. And tonight, in the flickering shadows of roast goose and golden mead, you have tasted all three. You walk slowly now, the feast still echoing in your belly and your memory. The torches behind you flicker lower, the voices fade into warmth and hum. Overhead, the stars begin to press through the velvet dark, distant and ancient, like the recipes carved into this land. You feel full, truly full, in a way that is more than food. It is the echo of history, of hunger answered with ceremony, of laughter braided with bread. You reach your door, hand on wood, the scent of roast clinging to your sleeve. You smile, quietly. Not all riches shine. Some are served with a ladle.